Hello and welcome back to the User Flows podcast. My name is Thomas Morell, and this is a show where we talk about UX design and careers. I get to interview designers who I admire about their journey into the field and how they've ultimately been successful in their roles. And we'll break all that down so that we can all learn together. So today I am joined by Mariyam Elshrief, who I got to work with very briefly, but she definitely left a lasting impression. And I'm really happy to connect with her again today, and I will let her introduce herself. Enjoy the show, everyone. And one more thing before we get started, I just want to mention that I have a survey up at thomasmorell.com/survey, where I'd like to learn more about what you're looking to learn in this show or about UX design in general. And just if you could spare a few minutes to let me know exactly what you want more or less of in the show, it'll help me kind of make this show better. I would really appreciate it. So again, it's thomasmorell.com/survey. So if you could please tell us a bit about yourself.
Absolutely. So how I got into UX field is kind of a funny story. I came from many interests. So in undergrad, I tried marketing, graphic design. I switched to computer science, a little bit of business. And so I had many interests towards that kind of field. And so as a senior, I was in computer science, not wanting to be a software engineer. I truly despise coding. And at the end, I was like, okay, it's not too late to kind of look for a field that I would like to kind of be passionate about and work every day in a field that I'm passionate about. And that's where I discovered UX. I started first teaching myself through articles and free workshops. And then I decided to take the step to join an official boot camp. Definitely after finishing undergrad in a different field and just like switching into a boot camp. Looking back at it, it's definitely the best decision I've ever did for myself.
Okay, fantastic.
That's how I got into UX.
Oh, very interesting. That's pretty brave. Senior year, deciding to go a whole completely different route. That's how did the parents take it?
Oh, definitely. They were like, thought I was indecisive. I'm rooting my own career. I definitely got a lot of pushback from it, even my friends. But I trusted my guts. I always knew that I wanted to work in something that I'm very passionate about. And I knew that the way to grow is to work in something that you're passionate about. I know that not many people are lucky to do so. I'm very lucky to be able to actually be in that career and to do what I love every single day.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And it takes a lot of guts to just say, like, I know this isn't the right thing for me, so I'm going to try something completely different. So I definitely, much props to you for that. That takes a lot more guts than most, 20-year-olds in college would do. So that's really exciting. And I'm glad you brought up General Assembly. I like to ask people about that because it seems like most of the people I've worked with and most of the people I've interviewed on this show went to one of the boot camps. And General Assembly is obviously one of the biggest ones. So could you kind of tell us a bit about what that experience was like and how that worked out for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So actually in senior year, when I decided I wanted to do the switch, I wasn't sure that I wanted to do this full-on commitment of immersive course, to pay that money, to pay that time into General Assembly. And so I took their part-time courses in UX. And I remember that time, it was like a really less price. It was a more manageable price. And I started taking a little bit and deep dive into a little bit of UX fundamentals. It wasn't everything that you need to know about UX, but it was UX fundamentals. And it was very good for me to just take that step into going to the immersive boot camp. Immersive boot camp was very intense. It was like from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. You're doing nothing but collaborating, talking to developers, learning about UX. And a lot of people kind of quit usually after the first 2 weeks. So if you complete after 2 weeks, that means you're in it for the long run. And I think it was way better because I was so torn whether to do a master's in UX or to actually do a boot camp. But then I did my own benchmark research on LinkedIn and saw people who went to that boot camp. Their job outcome was much higher and faster than those who went to who got a master's degree. I'm not saying that master's degree don't get you there, but it's just a longer route. And it's not really unnecessary. UX is mostly about experiences and the industry experience you gain rather than, the education you're getting.
Right
and
on.
That's why I decided to go to the boot camp.
Oh, that's fantastic. I love hearing that. And for the most part, I've seen everybody that's gone through these boot camps have a good amount of success. And I love that. I came across you come across the posts all the time on like LinkedIn or Instagram or other places where you follow kind of the design community. And I always hear that question, like, are design boot camps worth it? Are they, garbage? Are they, phenomenal? There's, both sides of the story on either side. And I came across one, and there was a lot of really negative comments about them. And I was kind of surprised because personally, I don't see much of a difference between the designers coming out of, design boot camps like General Assembly and Springboard and those versus those who are coming out of, universities, either masters or otherwise. So I'm really happy that you had a great experience with it. And that's awesome. So do you feel like studying computer science kind of prepared you more so than maybe some of your peers, kind of making that transition from technology to, well, the design of technology?
Well, to be frankly honest, you can't only depend on General Assembly, even if you come from a completely different field. Like if you come from, psychology, if you come from a doctor field, and you want to do this transition, you got to put all of your effort into it. You can't just depend that the learning from General Assemblies, that's it, that's how I'm going to get the job. You got to also invest in learning in yourself, self-learning, networking, growing your network, learning more outside of just like, the 8 to 8. And I feel with me, because of my computer science, there's definitely were employers who are very biased in terms of like, oh, she has a tech background. That means that she's going to communicate with developers more efficiently than someone who's from a psychology background. Even though this is not always the case, maybe a psychology background just learn how to effectively communicate with developers, but they never got the chance, or the employer had bias towards them. That's what's kind of the most tough part about, hunting a job in tech. There's always going to be bias about you, and you got to prove them wrong from the beginning. And I actually used that to my benefit. It wasn't maybe true. I never liked coding, and I never wanted to do coding. So I never wanted to market myself as someone who can code and design because I just never liked it. However, a lot of employers just saw that as a perk in terms of collaboration, and I let them. To be honest, it's as they say, fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
It definitely helps in terms of communicating with developers. I definitely took their vocabulary at school, but I'm no way in sense can call myself a developer. But it definitely did help towards employer biases.
Oh, that's fantastic. And so now that you have some experience under your belt, obviously, do you think you'll just remove that from your resume eventually, or will you kind of keep that in there just in case it does kind of give you that leg up?
I feel like with this day and age, especially if you work in tech, it's always evolving. And now what's really hot and trendy is AI, which AI requires a little bit of artificial understanding of machine learning and computer. And so I feel like I should go back into that, just, touch upon the surface, get a basic understanding, what I need to know as a designer. And what a developer needs to know in terms of design collaboration, and that's where an area I can grow in. I'm not necessarily going to take a developer route or a UX developer route, but definitely just to educate myself on that matter and stay up with the trends.
And that's fantastic. That's great that you're even thinking about that. There's so many new emerging technologies, and keeping up with them can be difficult. So spending some time doing that will only make you a bit more wiser and spread out your knowledge. So I remember when I interviewed you, you had a lot of those kind of like either hackathon projects in your portfolio, or you did some other kind of workshop and stuff. And I love that. What got you doing that? Was that just to try to build out the experience that, outside of General Assembly?
Yep, and I also wanted to know what it's like working under pressure. Hackathons, usually you need to like deliver in such short amount of time. And if you work for tech and generally in startups, that's what you usually do every single day. And so that's why I tried to contribute in hackathons as much as I can, because I wanted to show the potential employers that I'm really good at working under pressure and working with collaboration, and I can deliver a deadline, even though if the design process is not pretty and steady, and linear as it should be. Not every employer saw it as like that. But for me, it was a learning opportunity to know sometimes things don't get done just as they are in the books. You just need to
Yeah.
improvise and compromise to make all the product, come to shipment or come to deliver date, and just showing that, I think, helped me a lot. It gave me a sense of assertiveness in a sense. When I was talking about my project, I felt very assertive and confident in speaking about them, just because I went through this kind of challenges and compromises I had to go through. It wasn't the same as company. Like, I did not have successful outcomes, where like, oh, I changed this by XYZ and this caused the business to increase revenue by XYZ. But in a sense, it was like a mini version of that.
Oh, that's fantastic. And I do remember that interview very well. I think I was supposed to interview with you with somebody else and they couldn't show. So it was just me and you. And I always worry about that because I was like, oh, should I, pass this person up to the next round and then get yelled at for, passing along the wrong person? But you were absolutely the right person. It was one of the best because at that time, I think I was interviewing 1 or 2 people a day. And so yours stood out. I was like, oh, this person's perfect. I'm sending her right through. And so when you were going through the whole interviewing process, what kind of preparation did you do or put together for those?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good question. So I always keep a notebook with all the common questions, and for interviews. I use like articles like Toptal, Medium articles, UX Collective articles about interviewing, even sometimes YouTube videos. And like, I have a small notebook like this, and I just put all kind of the information for interviews on it. And on the day of the interview, I kind of review them. I go through them. I used to actually, before interviewing, record myself while interviewing with someone. And it would be only used for my own purposes. It was like doing user research on myself. So I would give myself pointers and feedbacks of what I did wrong and what went well. Because one thing I hate about, in the interviewing process is that you never get feedback. Even though the product design process is all about feedback, it's still not given to product designers when they're interviewing. So I could be making the same mistakes with every potential employer and not knowing what I'm doing wrong. And so I feel like that have helped improve my interviewing process very drastically.
That's really cool. That's such a good idea. And that's actually a tip I got because I was always nervous when I had to present and do those things, especially like in front of a big crowd. And one of the tips I got was, record yourself doing it like over and over and over again and watch it until you kind of get numb to it. And you just kind of get a little bit more at ease and more at ease. Because if you wait until, the day of to try it for the first time, it's going to be nerve wracking. So that's a really great piece of advice. I love that. And speaking of learning how to think on your toes from the hackathons, I remember during the interview, we had some kind of problem with Microsoft Teams and you couldn't share anything with me. And so you figured out a way to, I think you had some of your portfolio put together in a keynote and you were able to share the keynote with me live, like with a link instead of, sharing your screen, which I just thought was an awesome kind of habit for designers to get into. Is sometimes your website's not going to work. And so having things in some other type of format, like a keynote or a PDF or something, is a great tool. So was that kind of something General Assembly had you do, or was that something you picked up on your own?
It's something I definitely picked up on my own. It's like kind of, like strategically thinking, okay, now I'm stuck in a situation. Do I go to plan A or plan B, right? I remember I was like, oh my God, why isn't that going as expected? And then I had to I remember keynote features about, like as if it's a live stream, like a presentation, like a live stream. And I was like, I hope this works. I know because financial industries, which was Prudential, had a lot of security on it. So it might have not helped me share or, share just a link that you can open. And I'm glad it worked because sometimes we're stuck in situations where you need to decide on the spot and your decision has to be very logical. So I'm glad that kind of that portrayed that on that day.
Yeah, no, it was. And that was great because I was like, oh, what are we going to do? We're stuck, because you have no idea how many times that happened. Like working for a big financial institution, there's so many locks and blocks on almost everything. And that's just something else I need to get off my chest is for, young designers out there. Don't send like a Google link for like a Google Drive link, especially if you're applying for like a bank job. They won't be able to open it. So if your portfolio is in in something like Google Drive or like a a Dropbox link, don't send it because no one will be able to open it. So that's a really good point you bring up. Perfect. And so I also saw you did the IBM syncing the design thinking certificate. How was that? Was that worth the time and investment?
Yep. So during COVID, they made their courses, they're usually $500 to more, for free to help
Oh, okay.
designers kind of grow in their field and help get them jobs. A lot of times, that time in COVID, a lot of people got laid off. And so as an initiative, IBM started doing these courses to help designers get back on their feet and be able to apply for jobs. IBM is actually very leading in design thinking. They have a lot of research published about how design thinking increased revenue and helped other enterprise companies that deprioritize research, and prioritize them, and like kind of a good comparison between them. And I wanted to kind of get that IBM stamp, on my portfolio and resume. And it was very beneficial. I actually printed, there was like a lot of hand resources, and I kind of printed them for future reference. It was really beneficial because currently I work in a SaaS enterprise startup.
Okay.
So which I actually took an IBM course for, an enterprise startup. So I was able to understand that kind of environment from that course as well.
Oh, that's fantastic. And, huge congratulations on the new job. That's very exciting. How's all that going so far?
It's absolutely very exciting. Definitely, I enjoy like kind of the design team and the challenges that come, with working in an enterprise environment, an enterprise field. Definitely a big switch, from financial fintech to kind of, enterprise software as a service. But I've definitely enjoyed kind of working there as well.
Very cool. And so I believe they're located in San Francisco. So are you kind of fully remote now and remote for the future, or?
Yep. So there are plans to go back to office. However, no one knows. So there's no kind of any active announcements that are telling us to kind of go to the office. Especially as UX designers, we can do our job from the computer anywhere. Even like my developers are in Europe, and across all kind of the globe. So it doesn't make a big difference if I go to office or not. But kind of waiting on the announcement.
Yeah. We'll see. It sounds like things might go back into lockdown, but we'll see where it goes. We are, I guess, remote for the foreseeable future. Eventually we'll be back. I at least want to go back and do some like in-person design sprints and those things. But for me, like remote work is wonderful. I wouldn't change a thing about it.
Me too. I agree with you.
Yeah, I like being home. Where are you located? Are you?
I actually moved from New York to San Francisco.
Oh, you did? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Congrats. Yeah.
Thank you. It was a new step towards my career, and I kind of did that step to grow forward in the UX industry, in the UX field. But yeah, I definitely agree with you. Working remote is way much better and more efficient than going to office.
Absolutely. Well, you moved towards where all the jobs are. I actually moved away from everything. I moved down to Savannah, Georgia. So I'm very far from any big tech roles. That's
they're
awesome.
all remote now. So that's good also.
Exactly. That's so cool that you're in San Francisco. The last big trip I took before COVID hit, like I got back like right as like the news was coming out that there was this thing out there, was San Francisco, and it was amazing. I absolutely loved it. And yeah, it's a good thing I didn't visit it when I was younger, because I don't think I ever would have come back. It's a great city. But so with all this experience now, you have a few years under your belt. Any advice for that young computer science major who's decided, they don't want to code, they don't want to do engineering, they might have an interest in design? What would your advice be for them to start looking around?
I would say advocate for yourself. This was one of the biggest things. I heard numerous times I wasn't good enough for a role, or I wasn't good enough of a designer. And that's totally normal. When you're a junior designer, there's hundreds and hundreds of blockers on your road. And when there's a junior designer role available, there's too much demand. Like there's a lot of junior designers and just little job for juniors out there. And one of the biggest thing I try to do is really network and learn from other people who are in the field, whether that's someone from a company that I like or someone that I see that's very educated in the field itself. And I feel like that has helped me learn and grow rapidly. because I took this learning and actually kind of applied it to my kind of portfolio, to my career, to my interview. All those little things really help. I also got a mentorship, and my mentor really have helped me excel, to have kind of a guided plan on, okay, if one does not go well, we have two. If two does not go well, we have three, and defining those long-term and short-term goals. So this is very important for young designers. Short-term, what do you want to do? Do you want to just get your foot in the door, or do you just want to work for a big corporation? Do you want to work for a startup, or do you want to work for something that has your values? And kind of deciding that, like, that there's imposter syndrome that comes with junior designers, specifically trying to just get their foot in the door, and getting over that is the first step to actually getting that job.
Right on. And that imposter syndrome, that doesn't go away. It's ever present for everyone, no matter you're a junior, senior, or super professional. There's a guy I took a course from, Joe Natoli, and he's been teaching UX design for, like, I don't know, 20 years or more, long time. But I follow him on LinkedIn, and he just wrote this big long thing about, imposter syndrome doesn't go away. Like, he still gets it every time he has to give like a keynote speech at, like, in front of thousands of people. He says he still has it, which so it's just something you got to work past. And that's very cool that you kind of did all that work outside of, first off, your college education, and then General Assembly. That's just fantastic. And so you said you had a mentor. Is that somebody you found through an organization, or just somebody you found kind of on your own?
So I would attend New York City UXPA meetings, which is the UX chapter in New York City. And I actually found a potential mentor, and we approached each other, and we saw some benefits from us being kind of mentor-mentee relationship. And we started having these sessions. They were kind of like, even before I got my role at Prudential, they really helped structure me, because I was speaking to someone that I thought really greatly of, and I wanted to be kind of on their path. They helped me kind of structure my job hunt, structure what I want long-term, what I want short-term. And just seeing that, you would think, oh, wow, job hunting is not as bad as it seems. It's much more clear when you have a plan, when you have 1, 2, 3 to follow. And having that really have helped me. And now there's a whole ass website called adp.list or adp.org that helps kind of mentors and mentee kind of connect, whether that's temporarily or it could be long periods of time. And I think that initiative is very amazing for young designers, because they're able to learn from big people at FANG companies, or just from big people who work at startups, people who have taught UX, or people who have been in the field more than 20 years. So it's something very important for like junior designers to kind of know, is that you don't know anything, and that's okay. Because I think one of the biggest issues is that when we interview, we don't say, I don't know. We usually try to make sure that we know everything, and we're not as young as we seem, we're not as like immature or not design experience as we seem. And just if you go to these kind of mentorships, you learn that it's okay not to know things. Even senior designers don't know everything.
No, absolutely. And so did I see that you are now a mentor at ADP List?
Yes, I am. I was actually getting mentored before at ADP List, which is kind of funny, ironic. But yeah, tables have turned, I guess. I took every kind of advice I got from ADP List and kind of enhanced my portfolio. And all the advices that I got from there was very beneficial and helped me stand on my feet. I never took feedback as something that's so negative, even though people have different ways of giving feedback. Some are like cushioned and sandwiched, some are just like very hard. I always thought about feedback as something that's going to make me better. It's something that we're not privileged to always get. And if we're lucky to get that feedback, we should use it and see if it's subjective or objective and apply it. And that's how I kind of, had a lot of sessions on ADP List until I got my portfolio into a matter of like, oh, I don't hate it anymore. I'm okay with it. It's not the best, but I'm okay with it. And I feel like that has helped me a lot in my job search.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, and I need a mentor now for podcasting and YouTubing and all that stuff. So I understand it. Getting a mentor is a fantastic thing to have. I've been mentoring students with Springboard, which has been really good. And I think
Oh, it's amazing.
super beneficial. And I haven't tried ADP list yet though, so I'll have to look into that. I really like that. And I've seen a few people that I am work with starting to do it. And I just think it's a fantastic idea.
I think you should.
Love it.
It's definitely was.
Yeah. Well, you are definitely making the most out of a, a very short career so far. That's, awesome stuff. But who's, been your biggest inspiration through all this, or who or what has been your biggest inspiration?
That is actually a good question, Ryan. I think my mother coming here, it's just like very difficult. She believed in me and kind of like having all these switches and all of these indecisiveness. And I feel, oh, I have to have something. I have to prove something. I have to prove something for myself, and I have to prove something for her. I guess it was the biggest inspiration. Sometimes they usually tell you, when you get a bully at school or a bully when you're younger, you always want to try to work harder to prove them wrong. And that actually comes with great benefits, because you're working so hard on yourself that you really forgot the main reason that you're working, for that to prove someone wrong. It's not the same kind of concept, but it's definitely has helped me or inspired me in days where I wasn't like having enough energy to just look at the screen, to kind of keep looking and keep pushing. And push to the max, basically. And always, as I say, failing forward. I failed a lot, but I failed and I got up and learned from that failure. And it helped me a lot. Like I can't say like success is something that's linear. It's the more I fail often, the more I feel like success is nearer.
Done. Yes. Fail early, fail often, fail forward. Is that what they say? Something along those lines. Yeah, I love that saying. But so you obviously you go out and you learn a lot on your own, which is awesome. What are you going to learn next?
Right. I'm looking into learning about accessibility and AI. So these are two things that I feel I lack as a designer. Not every designer advocates for accessibility. That's because a lot of companies just hire external third-party agencies to deal with accessibility. But I feel it's very important for us to deal with accessibility and advocate for it. I recently actually broke my leg recently, and I had the worst kind of healing process, and only a person who designed a product, a knee scooter, rather than clutches, and it kept me thinking in terms of design. The knee scooter helped me move faster and more efficient rather than clutches. And I was like, wait, there's someone that sat there and thought about, oh, let's create a scooter that will help people who can't use their leg move more efficient as if they had their leg. And maybe that's not the same concept as it's digitally, but that's someone who advocated for something else. And I feel as designers, we're obligated to advocate for people who are in need of our help, and so that's why I want to grow kind of my field in knowledge and accessibility. There's a lot of things that I do not know. I can basically just scratch the surface. And I wish actually organization would teach their designers also about the importance of accessibility, what's coming up next, and how we can prioritize it, not just because of legal issues, but just because of morals.
Yeah, no, that's a great answer. I think it's an area where all of us could evolve and learn. I know myself. I'm always kind of running to Google whenever I have a question. So learning these things would be ideal. And so what else is on the horizon for you?
Artificial intelligence, definitely.
Yeah.
I actually, since I moved to San Francisco, everything has been operated by AI. Where is it? Cars, drones, robots, waiters, food, you name it. And I was like, wow, this is a field that is very booming right now, and we know little about it. It's going to be the next thing in a couple of years. And just getting on it early will help me, have that competitive advantage from among other designers. I think I'm always in the search for what is my competitive advantage. I always ask myself that question: what value am I bringing that other designers cannot bring? Because there's definitely a lot of designers out there right now, and everyone has to have their kind of special touch and special value to be seen. Rather, just like not knowing. They always tell you need to know someone at some company so you can be seen. But I feel it's more like, what's your competitive advantage and value that you can add that will help you be seen.
Oh, that's fantastic. Competitive value. I love that. And so where can people go to connect with you?
Oh, definitely. I have LinkedIn, my name, my
Hmm.
first name, and my last name. I'm definitely approachable on LinkedIn. I actually created a UX Instagram page, and that's just to share kind of learnings as a junior designer in general. So also it's UX underscore Mariyam.
Nice.
But yeah, yep.
Oh, fantastic. Okay. Well, that's perfect. And if somebody wanted to be mentored by you on ADP List, could they go to ADP List and request you? Is that possible?
Yeah, absolutely. I
Okay.
also linked the ADP list in my UX Instagram. So definitely they can click the link and just be redirected to book with me directly there.
Oh, that's super cool. Okay. Absolutely. And I will include all of these links in the show notes and all those. And I will make sure to connect with you on Instagram myself. Thank you so much, Miriam, for joining me and doing this tonight. I can't appreciate it enough. It's great to see you again. And I'm really glad to see that you've found a great position for yourself. So
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
no problem. And that's the show, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in today. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the show on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or anywhere else you listen to podcasts. I will be releasing a show about every other week or so. If you'd like to be a friend to the show, leaving a review or a comment on Apple would be very much appreciated. Share a link to the show with your friends or anyone else you might know who is interested in UX design. Feel free to recommend topics you'd like to hear discussed. And if you have any questions about design, design careers, or anything else for that matter, you can DM me on my Instagram at userflowspod. If you'd really like to help me out, you can visit thomasmorell.com/survey to let me know what you'd like to learn on this show or hear more or less of. So thank you. I appreciate you listening, and let's go create something.